Hey, and welcome to the Ruby Tuesday. My name's Ruben, and today we're talking about the newest addition into the Citadel franchise, Citadel Diana. This series is created by Alessandro Fabri and stars Matilda de Angelis as the mysterious and emotionally complex Diana. I'm going to dig deep into the action, the story, how it compares to the original Citadel series from 2023, and the larger franchise that's taking shape. There's a lot to unpack here, so let's jump straight in. So Citadel Diana is technically set in the same universe as the original Citadel series we got from Amazon Prime Video last year, but in many ways it feels like a completely different beast. The first Citadel series, starring Richard Madden and Priyanka Chopra Jonas, was big, bold and bombastic, a real popcorn flick action show. It was full of high-octane action sequences, global intrigue, and a ton of slick spy gadgets that made you feel like you were watching a modern Mission Impossible mixed with a Marvel movie. But Citadel Diana takes a step back from that formula, offering something a bit more intimate and grounded while still keeping the core of espionage at its heart, and as well, of course, keeping some of those futuristic guns and gadgets. In terms of action, Citadel Diana has moments of intensity, but it's not the same non-stop high-energy ride that the original Citadel was. Diana's fight sequences are meticulously choreographed, and Matilda throws herself into them with full force. But there's grittiness here. It reminds me a little bit of those action, somewhat 90s Bond films, but more action films. You know, those ones where it wasn't always about the explosions, but about the tension, the hand-to-hand combat, and the sense that anything can go wrong. There's also a bit of that Alias vibe. You know, the classic spy series with Jennifer Garner, which I absolutely love, especially in the way the show balances personal stakes with global ones. Diana, much like Sydney Bristow from Alias, is caught between her own trauma and the world of international espionage. The show plays with those personal versus professional tensions well, though at times it feels like it doesn't quite know which one it wants to lean into more. And as much as I could see the skill in the hand-to-hand combat and the well-rehearsed choreographed fight sequences, I could have done without the fast-pacing cutting and editing. It was very choppy in places. When the editor does this, it distracts from the skill the stunt team and actors obviously have. The choice to edit the way they have with a few of the action scenes, not all, left me confused. It was like they didn't trust the story to be exciting enough, or perhaps suggesting that the actors were not up to the skill level that they wanted, which can't be true, because when we do get non-cutting action sequences or scenes, our actors are very believable in them. Now, Citadel Diana is set in 2030, but we get a lot of flashbacks that help flesh out Diana's backstory. A lot of the show's emotional core revolves around her relationship with her sister and the trauma of losing their parents. While this creates a more personal narrative, rather than the larger-than-life stakes of the original series, it also contributes to the pacing feeling a little bit disjointed. Like, one moment you're fully immersed into this high-tech future world with spies, and the next you're back in the past watching Diana as a child navigating family tragedy. Those jumps can sometimes feel a little bit out of place. You're constantly bouncing between timelines, and it takes a while before everything comes together in the way that makes you feel connected to our character Diana. And speaking of that, Diana is a tough character to connect to, especially at first. She's very guarded, and part of her story is about how she has suppressed her emotions as a survival mechanism, and that's partly to do with some of the training she gets with some of those flashbacks during her training, not during when she's younger, but later on. This survival mechanism makes sense for the world that she's in and the trauma she's experienced, but as a viewer, it's hard to invest in her from the beginning. Matilda de Angelis plays this with an icy, closed-off demeanor that works for this role, but it also keeps us at arm's length emotionally. It's not until about the third episode that we really start to get enough of her backstory, enough of those cracks in the armor, that we begin to care for her. It's like peeling back the layers. Once we get there, there's more to appreciate about Diana's character, but it takes time to get to that point. The franchise that's been built here is interesting. Amazon has clearly invested a lot into the Citadel universe. We're seeing this global storytelling experiment where different creators from different regions are creating their own stories within the world. It's ambitious, and Citadel Diana certainly feels like a different flavor of spy thriller compared to its predecessor. Alexandre Fabry brings a more introspective and character-driven approach, but the question is, will fans of the original Citadel stick around for the slower burn? For those expecting more of the same adrenaline rush of the 2023 Citadel, this might feel like a tonal shift. However, if you're a fan of the Bourne Identity, which I definitely am, and Alias, which I definitely am, this might hit the right notes for you. So let's talk about cinematography and direction. I have to say, this is a gorgeous looking series. The action scenes are slick, but not over polished, keeping that gritty feel I mentioned earlier. There's a real sense of atmosphere in the way the show is shot from scene to scene. The futuristic tech and settings of 2030 contrast the more muted somber tones of Diana's past and some of her training. It gives the show a unique visual identity, although at times this constant back and forth between the timelines can make the flow feel a bit jarring, but it's necessary for us to care about the character. If we didn't have those background story specifically for Diana and why we should care about her plight, her story at all, then everybody would be trashing this series. But because of that, even though it slows up the pace and it's jarring at times, it does it a service. You have these beautiful wide shots of futuristic cities. Futuristic but real. This is only 2030 after all, no flying cars just yet. But then we get pulled into these intimate close-up moments from Diana's childhood. It's well executed, but it also reinforces the show's feeling of being a little bit out of place in its own universe. Performance-wise, Matilda is definitely a standout. She plays Diana with a quiet intensity like a ticking time bomb. You can feel there's much bubbling underneath the surface. But as I said, because her character is so emotionally repressed, it takes time for us to connect with her. When we do, it is satisfying, but the slow build-up might lose some viewers early on. The supporting cast also delivers some solid performances, though they mostly serve to propel Diana's story rather than steal any of the spotlight. Overall, Citadel Diana is a solid, enjoyable entry into the Citadel universe, but it feels like it's still finding its footing. It's more subdued than its predecessor, and that might not work for everyone. The action, while good, isn't as flashy, and the story's focus on Diana's emotional journey takes center stage. It's an interesting blend of spy drama and personal trauma, wrapped in a story that spans decades. If you're willing to give it time, by the third episode, there is definitely enough here to keep you engaged or care enough about the character you are watching. But if you're looking for a non-stop thrill ride like Citadel 23 delivered, this might feel a little bit off kilter. Although, I will say, the more you watch, the better this series gets. You just have to give it its time. You have to give it its juice. As a one and done binge of all 6 episodes in one sitting, I'd give Citadel Diana 3 out of 5 Nicolas Cages.
You got one.
But if you're forced to watch one episode at a time, my score would be lower because the slow burn nature of getting to a character that is fleshed out enough to care about what you are watching will be that much harder week by week. So the series definitely works better as a binge. But that's just my opinion. What did you think of Citadel Diana? Let me know, and as always, remember, live long and Tuesday.